Good morning, gentlemen. And I guess we are fully on the East Coast crew this week. Jonathan, not quite sure where he ended up with, but Eisler, I'm told, is dealing with horses, having just left here. I think last week he mentioned he was going to go play in the classic yachts, and I'm assuming he had a wonderful weekend. So he's back to horseland. But for this, the 21st of June, looks like we've got a trio. So thanks for joining in this morning. I'm sort of like, blurry eyes. It's been a long weekend down in Sayville Yacht Club, New York, playing with the J24 North Americans. And I thought your kids were coming, Ed. I didn't see any Baird Springs.
I told you, just go and introduce yourself to the tallest person in the event, and that'll be my son. He sailed with a fellow from Puerto Rico.
And, he was on the Puerto Rican boat. Okay.
Yeah. So they were up there. It was a new group for him, and they had a lot of fun together.
Yeah. In fact, they tied up directly behind us at the hoist. So, they were always in the blue hoodies and keeping themselves covered from the sun. So,
yeah.
They're always.
Was it a fun weekend?
Yeah. So it was a hard weekend. Have any of you guys ever sailed out of Sayville Yacht Club?
I have. So I raced penguins there. It can get choppy. It's shallow, but you get a good breeze.
Chop. That was the word of the weekend for everybody. But it's the first time I'd ever been down there. Ed, if you sort of zoom back, and you've got Fire Island, which is the Long Barrier Island to the south, and so on this great South Bay. I think I actually don't know how many square miles it is, but it feels like you're sort of open ocean.
It's big.
It is a gigantic shallow bay. And when the breeze comes out of the south, like it was all 3 days at 15 to 20, you can imagine what it does when the water is only 8 feet deep.
Sounds a lot like
Corpus. It's
like Corpus Christi. It's very similar to that.
Yeah. It was, but I mean, it's what was I'll sort of recap it. It was one of those cool events I hadn't been to in a long time, where small club that is literally on the beach. It's got a little bit of dunes. That's probably why the sunfishes, sail. There's so many, so there's so many of them there, I guess. But, everybody, must have been, I think, a third of the fleet were local Sayville Yacht Club boats. And, they were back helping the bartenders. They were bringing the food out to the tent. They were hoisting boats, driving the cranes, driving the bobcat to get the boats back and forth. They fully, a volunteer driven North American championship. It was pretty cool. There was at least probably 20 volunteer ladies there to check everybody in and do the weigh-ins, which was it was cool to see. But no, this was their major event for the year, and it was quite cool. Just sort of felt like good old school grassroots yacht club sailing.
I imagine there was a little extra enthusiasm just because it's been so long since we've been together like that,
Yeah, and they were supposed to host it last year, so they crossed out the 0, put the 1 on it, and hosted it again.
Good stuff.
Yeah, and so the chop, I think that's what a lot of the teams, including us, really struggled in that chop. And it was very defined on one tack over the other, and so very asymmetric style sailing that I think the middle of the fleet couldn't quite catch on to. But holy smokes! I mean, the top 10 boats. I mean, literally within 2 minutes they were already half a leg ahead. Just incredible. Wow. So. Yeah. Well, here, I'll tease you a little bit of this is sort of the view from on board. Now, we made the mistake. We couldn't find a fifth, so we said, we're a bunch of 4 fat guys, and so we were down on weight by 130 pounds, and that was not wise.
Hey, I recognize that guy hiking right there.
There you go.
Is that Herb McCormick and Stu Stroily I'm looking at?
That is Stu on the rail. He was the tactician slash spinnaker trim, middle boat. He does twings and chatter. I think we refer to him. And Herb McCormick back there on the spinnaker trim, and Ian Scott is the guy who owned the boat. And so Herb and Ian bought the boat back in the 1980s, and they've been partners in it forever. And just a great group of guys to sail on. So you can see how sparkling boat. So off there behind you is. In the far distance is the Fire Island shoreline, but just sparkling blue water. I believe.
Hey, that looks like a Puerto Rican flag right there.
Wait a second. Let's back that up. There you go. There are the Puerto Ricans.
See the tall guy in the companionway? He's It looks like he's sitting up on his knees, but he's actually standing on the interior of the boat.
He's actually standing. Yes, I can see that now. Yeah, we were near them every once in a while, but they were definitely in the step ahead. But yeah, you can see, beautiful sailing. It's just quite a fishbowl. You could set up a race course, in any direction you want, which was pretty wild. And here's a little bit of look from the I strapped the GoPro to the bow cleat, just to give a sense of what it's the splashiness of this whole thing, and soft on the hanks and going through. This is probably the only guy we were able to pinch off all weekend. I don't know. But
I'm still seeing the removing the
No.
other picture.
Yeah, the
all
white,
right,
the other
sorry.
picture.
All right, let me see if I can stop share. Let's see. Let me do a different share. Let's see. All right, how about that one?
There you go.
Okay, a little bit of up. Okay.
Yep. Brings back old memories.
Yep, slogging your way upwind.
Yeah, spent a lot of time in that class.
You're gonna force that guy away.
Yeah, like I was saying, I think that was probably the only guy we were able to force away all weekend. But yeah, and
We had a great experience. You see how you're hiking on the lifelines there with just the top part.
yeah, the temptation is there to duck your head out and sneak the rest of you, but no. But
Well,
that was great sailing, good fleet.
We had a funny one in speaking of Corpus Christi, same sort of conditions, and we had a really great pin in start, but you want to go to the right, and they favored the pin enough that if you just could get across, you could be the first boat to the right as well. And we won the pin, and we started stretching out like you're doing there on the boat to weather, and they tacked away, and it was time for us to go. And I said, all right, let's tack, guys. And we were sailing with the owner of the boat who'd never been in the middle of it before. And he was really pumped up about, that we were doing well right away. And he wanted to do his best on this great tack that we were going to do. And we tacked the boat over. He crossed over. And because of that, just that top lifeline, it's a little bit higher than a lot of people are used to. And then there's nothing underneath it, right? And the boat sort of lurched right in the middle of the tack, and he went up in the air, grabbed the top lifeline, and tumbled over it into a seated position to hike on the rail. And I was like,
wow.
There's no way that you can ever teach that, It was amazing.
I was afraid you're gonna say he went over the side.
No, we did that in other events when the lifeline actually broke, but that was a pretty cool one. It was, we were all in awe of this guy who somehow, pulled his arms in tight enough to just tumble right over the lifeline into a seated position and start hiking out.
Impressive skill. Yeah. Well, it was a wild one. We poor Herb McCormick, I will note for the record, we borrowed his 2005, I think it was F-150 to tow the boat. It's from Newport. It's not too bad. Down from the London ferry, on the ferry, down from the Orient Point, down the yacht club. And I kid you not, as we were sort of rolling into the yacht club parking lot, the engine starts to shimmy and loses power, and truck died on the spot.
Oh,
Yeah.
time
So
for one of the new electric 150s.
Yeah, he was a little bummed, but so luckily we get the one-way U-Haul to get it home, and Herb's down there still trying to figure out whether he wants to bury his truck in Long Island or try to save it. But anyway, but that's all part of the adventure, right? The road trips are what make the sailing fun. So it was good for our boat to get out of Newport and go do something different.
And it's never the perfect day stories that we tell stories about, right? It's always the things that didn't quite go the way we want. Remember the time the truck died right when we pulled, that sort of thing.
So otherwise, it was good. It was again good to get on the road. As you said, back when you went off to Europe, and it felt like a bit of the old school days of J24 traveling, But top 10 boats. We're in a whole nother league of their own. So we've got a lot of work. We got a lot of work to do to get there. But anyway, so how about you guys? What have you been up to?
Well, I the last 2 weekends, I watched the day of sailing, the East Scow Nationals a week ago, and the Snipe Nationals yesterday. 51 or 2 boats out there. Ernesto Rodriguez ended up clobbering everybody. Our old friend Augie Diaz, very respectable 4th. Augie not so young, but looked competitive. And 3 days of really good racing out of Severn Sailing. So that was kind of cool. And I think I mentioned last week, Harry Melga's the fourth ended up winning the E-Scouts by 1 point. Very cool regatta. I got to watch the racing with John Porter for the day. I did want to mention, Dave and Ed, that Dev Barker passed away last week at the age of 82. And he was a junior Commodore of the Pleon Yacht Club in Marblehead. He class of 1960 at Harvard. But the significant thing about him is at the age of 31, he became chairman of the race committee for the America's Cup for the New York Yacht Club for the 1970 America's Cup. And in race 2 of that cup, Gretel 2 tried to luff up going head to win to prevent Intrepid from going between Gretel and the committee boat. But under the rules at the time, if the gun had gone off and you hadn't crossed the line, you weren't supposed to sail above close hauled, which the Australians did. But Dev Barker was in the horrible position of not only being chair of the race committee, but also chair of the jury. And Sir Frank Packer, who was the head of the Gretel 2 syndicate, who owned a bunch of newspapers and television stations in Australia, really played it up about, well, this is kind of like protesting your wife's mother. You know, you're not going to win. And they really vilified the New York Yacht Club and Dev Barker. And the rules did get changed that after that in the America's Cup, and by extension, an awful lot of big events, that the jury needs to be an independent body separate from the race committee. And Dev wrote a book about it, which I have right here. It's not very thick, 49 pages, but he talks about it. And interestingly, at a America's Cup seminar 40 years later, I was the MC, and Sir James Hardy was there, who was the skipper of Gretel 2. He wasn't the helmsman of that start. A guy named Martin Visser was the helmsman, who was kind of a hothead, apparently, according to John Bertrand in his book, Born to Win. And but Hardy really took exception, and he wrote me a 3-page single-spaced letter justifying their action. So 40 years later, emotions had not died down, even though the rule, which was 42-1E at the time, was very clear, and Gretel 2 should have been disqualified. But Gretel went on to win the race, and a lot of people thought that the race should be resailed, but clearly it was a foul, and Dev made the right decision. But I do think, as a direct result of that incident, yacht racing is a lot better today because we do have independent juries.
That's true. And, you know, I remember that situation because I was really young. I was in the junior program, but it was one of the first times that we ever saw, you know, a start televised. There was the Goodyear blimp was up above it, taking pictures. And actually, Walter Cronkite had it on the news that night, you know, that oh, the Australians are in a protest and all. And, you know, it was really interesting because I remember at the time, we were starting to be aware of all those sorts of rules and stuff. And I remember thinking, hey, they can't do that. And, you know, and in fact, that was the outcome of the rules. But it was one of those moments as a little kid that I remember thinking, hey, you know, I understand that rule, and they can't do that. So good fun.
Yeah, it was tough on Dev Barker, but the rules are clear. And you're right, the Goodyear blimp filmed it, and I think it'd been on. Well, you're right. Walter Cronkite had on the CBS Evening News. It was a Sunday race, but it was the next day because the protest hearing wasn't until the next morning. They had a lay day. Yeah. So that protest probably came out in time for Walter to talk about it. But it was very controversial at the time, even though it was exactly the right decision. And John Bertrand in his book says that basically they didn't know the rules and they were shocked when somebody read the rule book to them when they got into the dock.
Know the rules, right? Read the SIs, know the rules. Yeah.
And then I got to crew in a Harbor 20 on Saturday. It was a Leukemia Cup regatta here in Annapolis. And I crewed with a fellow, John Heights. He's in his 70s. He's a cancer survivor. And we had great fun. We opened with a 7th and we moved up to a 5th and ended up with a 2nd and ended up tied for 2nd for the regatta. So I think John was somewhere between elated and ecstatic. And it was good for me to get back out in there in water. And we had 23 boats in the Harbor 20 class, and another maybe close to 100 boats participate in the Leukemia Cup. So that
That's
was
great.
encouraging.
It's always
that-
been the benchmark for the charity regattas, and it certainly remains so, doesn't it?
It does. Although I think the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society is going to end their participation in these Leukemia Cups. So I'm not sure what exactly that means, but the Leukemia Cups have certainly had a good run. I was involved for 25 years. I stepped aside at the end of 2017. I'd had enough after 25 years of volunteering for this operation, but it's done a lot of good work and raised a lot of good money.
Do you have a sense of what's moving on to other things, or what, can you give us any background?
Well, what I heard is that they feel that there's a lot of management involved, and it takes too much time and resources, and which is too bad, because when I was chair of this thing for 25 years, there was me and one other guy, Marty Sitterer, that was it, and then some local chapters and a lot of volunteers pulling it off. So I didn't see where during my time, but I'm not there, and Marty is not there, and maybe it's just kind of hard to figure out our sport. So because we were raising, our average year was somewhere between 4 and 4.5 million year after year. And during my watch, we raised $62 million. So that's pretty significant. But maybe this COVID thing, we just didn't have any events in anything in sailing, and maybe that was it. So
Yeah. Well, let's hope they can bring them back someday. They were good, or they are good. They remain good.
they are good.
Yeah.
I think the ones this summer will see it through. So
Nice.
Hey, Gary, in the Harbor 20, is that something that you sail with 2 or 3 people?
either way, there's no weight limit, and on frostbiting you have to sail with 3. But in the summer, I would say this weekend most boats had 2 people, and John weighs 185 and I weigh 220, so we were at 400 pounds. So we were, as 2 of us, probably heavier than most out there. You're not allowed to hike out. There's no spinnaker, but they're kind of fun tactically. And 23 boats on a short course.
Yeah.
Lots can happen. Jim Capron ran the races. He was PRO. I thought he did a really good job setting the courses on a tricky day. And of course, the next course over was 52 Snipes racing. So I kind of kept an eye on them. And yesterday we went out and watched the Snipes race, and it was pretty good. And Dave, you talk about how the top 10 boats kind of emerge out of the pack so quickly. Out of the Snipes, I would say that there were probably 15 boats that were just ahead suddenly. But within those 15 boats, boy, it was some tight racing that went on. And Rodriguez, he ended up winning 4 races.
Yeah.
That's out of 4 out of 9. So that's pretty good. So he definitely was the clear winner.
And was that their what was that, their East Coast Championships, or what was the event?
It's the Nationals, and it's a qualifier for the Worlds. So that's why you had so many boats. I actually don't know how many boats qualify for the Worlds. 8 maybe. I don't know. Ed, would you know?
I don't know about the snipe class. That was also, I guess, a qualifier in your regatta, Dave, the J24s. And I don't know how many got out of it there. I would have guessed 2 or 3 or something. But
Yeah, 1, 2, yeah. Well, the snipe class is one of those ones that just keeps it sort of quiet lately, but it continues. I think the little pockets of health down in Florida, down Southern California, right? And obviously now Indianapolis.
Yeah, there's a fleet here. I mean, look, all the sails were new. The boats look good. People took it seriously. I did not see many coaches, if any, out there on the water. I think I was one of 3 spectator boats, and I was out on my Whirlwind, my Hood 32-foot sloop with my wife and daughter sailing around. It's Father's Day. So what would you like to do? Well, how about going for sail? Okay, let's go. So we went out and said, I know what we can do. We'll go watch the Snipes. So we watched kind of 1.5 races out of the 3 they had yesterday.
So I definitely got you out. What is the top 3 go fast tips for the Harbor 20? If you were to lay them out there, this is.
Angle of heel is incredibly important on those boats. Getting your weight centered is cool. And then next thing is don't pinch them. These boats need to be a bow down and sag off that head stay, and don't worry about pointing. Just think about speed. And then downwind, it's one of these situations where you wing the jib to windward, and it's the age-old question: well, do you go straight downwind with the jib out, or do you kind of reach back and forth? And my experience is almost sail by the lee. Get that jib out there and rock the boat to windward a little bit and bear off and sail low. I think you net a little faster. So those would be my 3 things in a Harbor 20. Not that I'm the big expert, but that's what I learned.
Seems like there's very few boats that don't include the fact that you shouldn't pinch in their top 3 tips. Right? It's just really rare to see a boat that points high and doesn't lose a lot of its momentum.
Yeah. Well, in the Harbor 20, you got to keep it cool and keep it cozy too, right? So you got to make sure rule number 4 is just chill, be comfortable. It's the Harbor 20. Come on.
Yeah, you don't want to sail overweight. I did one day of sailing once, and there were 3 of us over 200 pounds in the boat, and that was disaster.
Yeah.
We'd have great starts and go the right way and be 8th. So you want to be minimum weight, I think.
Yeah. Well, I've only had my one Harbor 20. I think it was the WD Shock Memorial Regatta or something like that in Newport Harbor. I did one race with Tom Shock, and that was fun. What a cool guy he was. But yeah, he's kind of disappeared. I think he went off into the woods in Wyoming or something. But once he retired,
he sold the company to somebody in the class, and the new owner have been having some kind of legal battle. And I heard a little bit about it. I wanted to I don't want to hear about it, but.
Well, cheers to Tom Shock for producing a bunch of cool classes.
It's a good boat.
Yeah, he was a good guy. One of the industry greats, I think. Just a class act. So that's good. All right, Ed, what do you got cooking? What do you got going? Then we'll go switch over to the Olympics real quick. See what you got.
Well, it was this past weekend was busy with keeping up on how both of my boys were doing. They're off racing different places, and that's always fun to see. And then I'm still getting over being at the Chicago Nude. That was so fun that it was a lot of good recollections from that one. But no, leaving this week, heading up to Michigan for a couple days to do a little bit of 52, checking in on our offshore inventory and getting ready for the Mackinac race. And then heading from there over to Sweden for our next RC44 event. Right. So looking forward to that. That's going to be, Europe is steadily marching towards being more open for us. And so I think it'll be a little easier trip. This fingers crossed that it'll be a little bit simpler this time, but still a lot of restrictions. You still got to get tested before you go and when you get there. And we still have to live in a bubble when we go to the actual event. So, that's disappointing, but we get to go. And that's good. So we're looking forward to the second event of our season and in the 44s. Do you have a sense of what some of the other teams, is it getting easier to get crews to move about to some of the other events lately? I guess particularly with Europeans coming here. Yeah, I mean, for instance, at the Chicago event last week, we had there were a number of Europeans that were sailing on, the U.S. boats there. The one place that it's still challenging to get in and out of, that I'm aware of anyway, is Australia, New Zealand, where they still require, when you go back, it sounds like there's still a couple of weeks that you have to quarantine no matter what. So for some of those guys who do a lot of racing in Europe and tend to fly back and forth all the time, they have found an apartment in Europe somewhere that they're just going to live in for a longer period of the summer, so they don't have to be quarantining for 2 weeks every time they travel. But for others, they're just not coming. And so it's not quite open enough for them yet. And, it's going to be interesting to see, especially New Zealand, how they handle this with they did such a great job of locking down totally and keeping the virus out of the country. But now, it's a bit of a restriction on everybody that, they're still pretty locked down while the rest of the world's starting to be freed up again. So yeah, it's a little tricky, but within Europe, all those guys are moving around pretty easily now. They just have to get tested and, and fill out a bunch of forms as the European governments love to have those forms that you stamp and put in a big pile. So yeah, and as far as guys that are coming up and down from South America, I haven't seen many doing that, so I'm not sure about that. Could be there's still some restrictions in place there, but at least we're starting to get more open between North America and Europe now.
Nice. All right, I want to take it real quick. Going back to the WinQuest for the mech race. What do you have to do to switch the boat out of the buoy racing mode? And I mean, obviously you guys will do it in a day and whatever, a couple hours. And but do you same amount of bodies and or how would the inventory change? How do you set it up?
I think we actually sail with one less person on the offshore situation. We end up with a lot more weight on the boat just from, safety gear and bunks and stoves and gas for that, all those things that we don't have to have for the day races.
Nor do you really need for the distance race, right? At the end of the day. But
and it's all down there, but we don't use it because you sit on deck the whole distance race too. And maybe there's an hour to get a little rest at some point, but seems like we push on through for those 36-hour races.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, but then we do have to carry more inventory of sails, all the fluids and food that we're going to have for the race. So it weighs the boat down and it makes it behave differently. And then we have to go out and learn about reaching more because you never do that in a day race. So we got code zeros and, fractional sails and reaching spinnakers and different staysails and, all those sorts of things that you have to use when you go reaching rather than upwind, downwind. So we need to go confirm that everything is functioning right and that we know where to trim it. And because just like we don't do that much with the boat, the guys don't do that much reaching and overnight sailing either. So
yeah.
We have to refresh our memories of how to do that.
Yeah. And if I remember right, no reaching struts either, right? Or were those banned or eventually allowed?
Reaching struts in terms of trimming a sail too on the outboard edge. Yeah, that's not, I believe, and I could be wrong here, but I believe that is a choice within the rule, that you get a little, you get a penalty or, changes your rating if you have that sort of thing. Now for boats, like for instance, on the maxi boats that we sailed in Europe, they definitely have that, but they do a lot more coastal courses where they go reaching around corners. And man, I tell you, putting the jibs out on those poles and then having the ability to, to adjust the height of the pole, it makes the boat just light up, and it's definitely worth having. But as you get down into smaller and smaller boats, it's a little tougher. As you know, the double-handed and single-handed boats that go around the world, they all have those things sticking out each side, and they trim off of them all the time. But they just have one sail that's up there, and they furl it, and they try to use it at a lot of different angles, which makes sense to have that ability, because downwind, you can't go on a 90 or 100, 110 degree reach with a jib that isn't somehow trimmed outboard far enough to be able to get some leech tension on it. And you can't put a kite up in that stuff. So now all of a sudden you're trying to put some big code zero up, and that gets hard when you're single handing, where you could just have this simple tool of this pole that sticks out to leeward and holds your jib in a better angle, and off you go.
So who does most of the driving? I guess is Doug on this one, or who's the primary helmsman?
Well, Doug and his son Dalton are both. They both come to all the events. They're the drivers. They are switching back and forth, event to event, to see who wants to drive, but also to keep some consistency for that week. Of course, for a longer race like this, where you're going overnight and everybody gets tired, there's 4 or 5 people that can drive, and it's a lot of fun driving. I mean, a 52 is just a great boat. They just love all the angles that they sail, and it's really fun to drive them. So I think there'll be a line of folks ready to go.
So I'm sure that the analytics will save your bacon on this one, because the numbers don't lie, right? So who's the better of the 2 helmsmen between the father son pair there here?
Oh, well, the analytics are really clear. Every day is different, so you can't tell.
But there's a diplomatic answer.
And you dodged that one easily, didn't you? Yeah. Yeah, they're both good, right? Yeah, they're all the same.
You know what? They are. They both good. I mean, Doug's won world championships in the 52 as a driver, and Dalton is he's figuring all this stuff out. He's newer at it, doesn't have as much experience as Doug does. Obviously because he's his son and a lot younger. But boy, he's picking it up quickly, and he's doing a really nice job. So I don't care who's on the helm. We're going to go just fine.
Okay. Well, I'll throw another one at you then. Since you sail around with these guys a lot, what's the DeVos opinion on what's going on with the Cup then? There must be some real chatter. Do they went in? Do they went out? What are they complaining about? What do they want to see?
That's dangerous territory to get too far into. But the reality is that everybody wants to see a long-term, commercially viable, strong America's Cup process. Want to have lots of teams. We want to have a consistent, format that we know we can count on every so often. And, so things that make that happen are things that make these guys happy.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, let's go with that one. Gary, what do you think?
I think it'd be a tragedy if the America's Cup were held in some place other than New Zealand. We saw the Swiss go to Valencia. Now, Valencia was a good place, and the Swiss, Lake Geneva is probably not quite right. But leaving San Francisco and Bermuda, I don't know if that was the correct thing to do. But New Zealand's such a sailing crazy place to shop at. Surely they should stay there. And then the question that Ed puts forward is really good. You want to have lots of challengers, and we saw 3 challengers last time. And somehow the system has to be able to be accommodating to get more boats to make this a bigger deal. Because if you only have 2 or 3 challengers, it's going to get on the 3rd page of the sports sections, not the 1st.
Yeah, no, the ones that everybody remembers are the ones where we had 8, 9, 10, 12 teams.
Valencia, Fremantle, Newport, right?
Yeah. So that's where, as a sport, we hope that we can get it there. Obviously it's incredibly expensive and it's a challenging time. Last year was especially challenging with all the restrictions. And so you can, give it a little bit of a pass that we didn't have more teams, but we do need, as a sport and as an event, to just encourage as many teams as we can get to be there and that are going to be somewhat viable. Get them out there racing, and that brings more people into the sport, more interest to the sport, more support for the sport. It's all good.
Yep.
Yeah, I can imagine how frustrating it must be for the DeVos clan to have their assets, beautiful millions of dollars of assets, sitting there wrapped in plastic in Auckland, just waiting for an answer.
Yeah, they're not alone. All the teams are quietly shut down right now, and I think the most disappointing thing that I've discussed with Doug is just that how difficult it was to have their last campaign just stop so suddenly from one moment, where things didn't go the way they wanted, and that's tough for anybody, and that's the memory that stings. But everybody right now is just waiting to find out what the next event's going to be like, where it's going to be, and decide if they want to get started getting involved again.
Yeah. So speaking of next events, we've got the Olympics to look forward to, right, Gary? And Veronica, I've got my team shirt on today. That it's my little way of donating to the athletes when they put out their t-shirt fundraisers. I can sport $30 to help them anyway. So go Riley and Anna. So what's the scoop? What do you know? And what are you hearing, Gary, since you've got your pulse on the broadcast side of it?
Well, the broadcast side, I will be doing the coverage. We're going to have 2 hours of coverage per day for 11 days in a row. The first 5 days are fleet racing, and then the last 6, they cycle through the medal races. And basically we do 1 class a day, 2 races a day is kind of the format that'll be going. And sadly, I'm doing it solo. I'd rather have somebody with me. Last time I had the great Randy Smythe. But anyway, that's what I'll be doing. And people will be able to download it at any time after we get done with it. And for me, it means starting my narration, I think, at 11 at night. So it'll be late nights for me. I mean, the big question right now is how is the U.S. team going to do? And most of our classes are very young, with the exception of the men's 470 with Stu McNay and Dave Hughes. They got fourth last time. They've been at it, not full time in the 470. And it's probably the last time they'll appear since the 470 will be a mixed gender event. So I'm hoping that we see them in the top three. You know, Maggie Shea and Stephanie Roble have shown some signs that they could be a top three contender in the 49er FX. So I feel pretty good about them. Riley Gibbs is definitely a rising star. He might get a little overwhelmed at his first Olympic Games. So I think it's going to be a stretch for him to get to the medal. And then, you know, our lasers, you know, Paige Raley and Charlie Buckingham, they've been at it this a long time, and they have a way of getting themselves into the medal race, the lower end of it. And maybe one of those can have a breakout and be in the top three, probably the last time for both of them in the Olympic Games. And Luke Moeller in the Finn, that's a tough class. Not a lot of boats. He's shown some signs of being doing well, but again, very tough event. So if I were looking to the crystal ball on the U.S. side, I'd say we're going to win between 0 and 2 medals in the Olympics this time. We'll see.
I'm certainly hoping for Paige to really get it done. You know, I feel like I've been rooting her for so long through the highs and lows, and her commitment is crazy. And so
I think she's 36 now.
Yeah.
So, you know, she's at the height of her career, and she certainly has experience and been through the games a few times now. So this is her third Olympics, and she came so close to beating Anna, who got the gold medal in 2008. So she's a veteran, and if she keeps clean and not get wrapped up in protest, I mean, it was such a shame that, was it the second race or first race where she got into a protest with the Chinese woman, and then went ahead and protested her for not doing her turn soon enough, and then she got picked on the rest of the regatta.
Yeah.
So, you know, just stay out of trouble early. Use those cards on the last race, not in the first race.
Yeah. Well, she's the hometown one for you, Ed. So I'm sure the rest of the region is pulling for to get this one done. Yeah.
Well, you know, we love Paige, and she's done a great job. I coached her years ago, and was really a pleasure to work with her. But she's put her time in, and we hope that she does well. But I got to say that there's quite a number of these, sailors involved this time that are either from Florida or spend a lot of time here, preparing. So it's kind of nice to have that association with everybody.
Yeah. Cool. All right, Gary, we get to, well, I guess we'll get to hear your voice over the racing then. And before then, we'll run us through the schedule so that we don't miss anything.
Well, the racing starts July 23rd and wraps up. Hopefully we don't have any bad weather days, but you don't know over there in Enchinima. It's a pretty good place to sail. They have a sea breeze. It's an island with a causeway to get out there. Same place the Olympics were in 1964. And like I said, our races are basically at midnight at night, 2 hours a day. But you can wake up in the morning and watch it. NBCOlympics.com is the place to find it. It doesn't cost anything. I didn't think you have to register and put your email address in there, but you'll be able to do it. And will any of it be on TV? Maybe. We certainly got someone out of Rio on television every day. Not so much in 2012 when we had someone 2008, lots in 04, lots in 2000. Look, if an American team's doing well, somehow that makes itself on NBC, but we'll see.
Good. All right, cool. Do you have access to the athletes during the event itself, or do you find, is that a little bit a part of the program? Or
I'm 6,000 miles away in Stamford, Connecticut, but I have most people's cell phones and email. There is a protocol in the Olympics that you don't contact competitors before the racing in the morning.
Mhm.
But they're fair game afterwards. And, I'll be in touch with not just the US team, but other teams as well, and coaches. So I'll have pretty good input. I'm sure I'll be spending my mornings, their afternoons, following up on the races that day to learn more for the next one. It's a very intense time. There's 1,800 people going to be working in Stamford, Connecticut, 24 hours a day. And, I've done these games since 1988. And the way I make it work is I put blinders on, and all I think about is sailing. I don't worry about anything else other than sailing when this is going on. So I look forward to it.
Oh, well, thanks for doing it, and good luck with that.
Thanks.
Hey, Gary, I thought that's what you did every day.
Oh my gosh.
Blinders on, only sailing, right?
Oh my gosh. I chair a hospital group, the board of a hospital group, an environmental and a tourism board. But I am coming down the stretch on my boards. I feel like I've done enough. So by the end of 2022, I hope to be off all boards and do some more sailing.
Excellent. Well, I'm sure Black Island Race Week will be missing you, which does start today. I heard from some people there sitting out in the fog, so it's classic block again and postponed.
I didn't know that.
But the most amazing thing is they've scheduled the Around the Island race for the first day, which to me is kind of mind blowing. That was the first question I asked as well. So anyway,
usually that's the middle of the week.
Yeah.
Or, they watch the weather when you're going to have good breeze to go around.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've done Block Island an awful lot of times, dating back, I don't know, 1970s. It's a good event, but you can easily lose a day to fog. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And I like the Around the Island race. It's only 18 miles, but it just seems like a lot of crazy things happen all the way around that island in an 18-miler.
Well, maybe we'll get up to do by 20. I guess it would be 2023, right? Every year. So we'll have to get a sailing reel team together. We'll get Ed there, get him to navigate us around the islands.
Yeah.
You can drive the bus, and I'll do the bow. How's that? We get a Harbor 20. We'll just
I'll do the commentary.
Right.
We get Jonathan and Peter Eisler. They're pretty good.
Well, if you want me to navigate, make sure it's a very shallow draft. Okay.
Yeah. All right, gents. Great to catch up. We'll see you next week.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks,
All right.
guys. See ya.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Always
See
a
you, bye.
pleasure.